Ever struggle with weight loss? Us too. Collectively, we have lost 175 pounds on our journey to becoming plant-based. But what we've noticed is that more than calorie counting and macros, there's other hidden factors that it takes to really live at your best. And we can't wait to share them with you in this episode.
Hey, we're Britt and Chris Carmichael, and you're listening to the Elevated Life Podcast. Throughout the 13 years we've been together, we've never ceased in our endless quest to better ourselves.
We've studied top experts, philosophers, and gurus. After years of personal self-experimentation, we've found the tools for shifting your beliefs, moving through fears, and developing a positive mindset.
If you're ready for a breakthrough, then you're in the right place, because we're here to empower you to take control of your life with simple mindset shifts that create radical transformation.
We'll be diving into topics like personal growth, health, philosophy, spirituality, relationships, success, and mindfulness.
So create some space for yourself and get comfy. It's time to become the badass you were born to be. So they say health is the first wealth, and almost 14 years ago, that was the first conversation we had when we met was, hey, I'm overweight and I need help. And you had spent so much of your life researching weight loss, health, working out, like you are a guru when it comes to fitness and well-being. And I think that's one of the beautiful assets that you bring to Team Carmichael. So I feel like this episode should be dedicated to the weight loss journey of going plant-based, essentially, which it didn't start that way, but for the last 7.5 years, we've been plant-based. So I feel like sharing this conversation might shine a light for someone who is struggling with their health and wellness, whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. We've done it all. I've gained it successfully. But this is just a very near and dear conversation and topic because it was my biggest struggle and continues today to be something that I have to consciously, proactively work at.
Yeah, just like money, weight is one of the things that so many of us have our identity tied to. You know, if we're no matter if it's bigger or smaller or muscular or not, it's something that we so strongly consider to be an integral part of how we view ourselves and, for most of us, how we think the world views us. And so for me, this journey started super early, and that's because I hit puberty late. I mean, I was one of those super late bloomers. Up until, I'd say, probably 6th or 7th grade, I was very chunky. I mean, I wore size husky. Like that was what they literally put
That's
on.
so sad.
That's what they put on the tag was husky. And I remember going into you have to get a physical fitness test. You have to go to your doctor and they do all the tests for you. And in 6th grade, I remember I went into the doctor. My mom worked for the guy at the time, and I'm in there and he says, "Hey, let me see you do a push-up." And I could not do one. And it was a moment where I felt semi-humiliated. It was strange because now looking back, of course, at this point in my life, I wouldn't care at all. But back then, it was such a big deal. And I remember feeling like my masculinity was challenged and all those kinds of things. And I had so much wrapped up into what my body was. And people were already starting to blossom, especially at that time, girls were. But it took me forever to go, my voice didn't even change till I was probably late, 16, maybe even 17 years old before my voice started to really take a difference. And so being in there and being a heavier kid at that point, and all these other kids are starting to sprout up and everyone's growing inches taller. And here I am a little bit behind and heavy because of it. I ate the same amount as we all sat at the same lunch table. We all ate the same foods, probably went home and ate the same string cheeses all day long. But for me, I was heavy. And so is that moment when I couldn't not do that push-up. I said to myself, I'm going to figure out what the deal is about this fitness, what the deal is about health, and how can I start making changes. The problem was it took me so many years to figure out that it's about wellness. It's not just about how much you weigh or how you look or what the physical attributes are on the outside. It's so much more about how do you feel? Like, how does your body feel? Can you run a mile and still feel good? Are you getting good sleep at night? Do you have cramps when you have sex? It's those kind of things.
Are you stressed out?
Yeah, more than that, it starts to be important. And it's not just, am I skinny or fat?
Do I look good in a bathing suit?
Yeah, but that's where everyone starts off. So that's where we start off. And for me, that's where I started off then. And during that summer of that year, I got my first gym membership. And you had to be, I want to say 12 was the beginning age you could get it, as long as your parents accompanied you to the gym. And I had a grandmother that ended up coming with me, and she was the one who would go up there while I would train. She would walk the treadmill. And so my fitness journey started early. But back then, I didn't have the internet. I didn't have the ability to look up everything. No idea. So I started buying books, started going to the library, getting books, started going and getting Muscle and Fitness magazine. I remember how inspirational it was to me to see guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff like that who were posing, and they just look so different than what I was used to. And I thought, man, I want to do something like that.
It's very interesting because when we work with people, especially you and doing your hypnosis work, we find that so many of our beliefs stem from early childhood. Something that somebody has said to us that causes an imprint or a belief, if you will. And for me, when I was 8 years old, my uncle called me Brickney. And I didn't know it at the time, but that placed a subconscious level, like a label on a subconscious level that made me think and believe that I was fat. Even though at that time I was just like a normal kid. It was just something that he said. And fast forward 2 decades later, doing that forgiveness session with you, I put my uncle in the chair and was like, I can't believe you called me Brickney. I thought I was fat my whole life. I hated myself for decades because of you, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was so healing for me to understand where I even developed the idea and the belief that I was fat. Because without that, I don't think I would have had to go through that entire journey of body shaming and not loving myself, not thinking that I'm perfect. What might surprise so many of our listeners, if you've been following us at all for a while, or if you've even seen pictures of us, I played every sport in high school. And even before high school, I started playing soccer before kindergarten. You name it, I've played it besides golf. And playing sports, I think, had a huge impact in my fitness, but it was my mindset that I was constantly battling. I was doing all the exercises, I was working out, and I was tormenting my body thinking, I have to work out. I have to be brutal to my body. Otherwise, it's not going to look good. And I went through this long period of, I only work out because I don't love myself. And that's where I think the trap really was.
You nailed a really important point. And I see so many people do this, and it screws you up for a lot of years. And that is, besides believing people that are other than you, that's a problem that we all do. But the main factor here is that we go to the gym or we run or whatever physical activity we think about, or even the way we eat, as punishment. And the problem with doing it that way is that you'll never enjoy it unless you're just super masochistic and that's your thing. But for most of us, if we go to the gym thinking, I have to do this or no one will like me, or like, you're starting off on the wrong foot. That's just the wrong place to be. You have to be in a spot that, for one, I'm doing this for me. This is important for my journey and my well-being. And you have to start looking at what are the physical, health impacts of what's going to happen. And if you don't start at that point and you just come from a weight loss and only if I look this way, people will begin to love me and accept me and believe that I'm worthy of love, it's starting off so wrong. And if you'll instead start off with I enjoy this, because if you're doing something for your own good, you enjoy it. I enjoy going to sleep. I wake up feeling more refreshed. And if you can go into the gym or running or whatever with the same kind of attitude, it's easier. You don't have. It's not a struggle to put your shoes on. It's not a struggle to get out there and actually end up doing it. Otherwise, we'll procrastinate and then we get in that loop. It's where I don't want to do this because it sucks, and then you procrastinate doing it. And then you feel guilty because you procrastinate. And rather than do something about it, what you end up doing is going and getting crappy food and stuffing yourself full of crappy food, then feeling guilty again, and then having the same cycle repeat over and over again for years, and then wondering why we have so many problems related to this. And a lot of it has to do with because, with the way we can Photoshop people now and the amazing Instagram filters, and everyone has this little kind of perfect lifestyle, and the way we all look at athletes and how much we see them, these people work out all the time. I mean, they can eat, they can get away with a lot of things just because of the amount of calories that they're burning per day through physical activity. But so many of us don't do that. We try to emulate them in only a few ways of their life instead of realizing that it takes a lifelong dedication. And if you can think for just a moment, what would I need to do to be healthy? Not what I need to do to lose weight, because if you want to lose weight, I've always said the easiest way to lose weight is to cut off one of your limbs. That's the fastest way. If you want to lose weight, cut a limb off. But if you want to be healthy, we're talking about something different. We're talking about getting rid of some of the fat that's on us and doing it really smart. Your body is genius, and it always has been, and always will be. It's always trying to protect you. So a lot of us think that if we starve ourselves, which is a lot of way that, females and males do it, but females especially, they get into that spot where they think, well, I need to be skinny so I won't eat. That's what they hear. Oh, models only eat a peppermint a day or whatever. And so they end up copying that and trying to do it in their own life, but your body's too smart. It won't let you get away with that kind of crap. What your body thinks is, oh my gosh, I'm in starvation mode. And so your body goes, well, what I'll do is I'll start to sacrifice the muscle, because muscle is extremely metabolically expensive. And I'll just hold on to all the fat. That's why you see a lot of people that are skinny fat. And they end up with no muscle whatsoever, but they still have all this kind of like extra cellulite and things like that. And we have to get to a space where we realize that we're doing all of this for our own good. This is what really benefits us. Movement and flexibility and strength are fantastic things that we want to carry. Look at how your grandparents are right now. Whenever I looked at my grandparents and I realized that they weren't flexible, they were heavier, they weren't feeling good in their older years. Don't work out. They're not moving, they're not walking, they're not doing stuff. But like, I don't want that my end of days, those last 10, 15 years to be things where I'm just stuck in a chair my whole life, just watching old reruns of Price is Right.
On genetics.
Yeah, you can't do that. So you have to start early. For me, that's what happened. So I started because of that guy. And you also touched on the forgiveness aspect. But had that doctor not done that, and he laughed at me, that was the really big deal. Not only could I not do the push-up, but he had a laugh to him. And I can still hear the tone in my head. But at this point in my life, how thankful I am for him, because I don't know that I would have done anything about it. I don't know that I would have made any changes. So a lot of times when we are looking for the forgiveness, what I like to always do during the forgiveness is to thank the person, which is hard to do. And it's hard, especially if it's causing a lot of emotional trauma for us. But to thank them, because had some of those people not done the things that seem super crappy to us, we would have never made the change. We would have never pursued something different. And then once we came out on the other side, we'd have never been an inspiration or an example for other people who want to do the exact same thing.
Well, that's exactly how I was able to forgive my uncle who labeled me as Brittany, because although I spent decades of my life hating myself and being overweight, because our mind is a powerful tool, I ate the right amount of calories. I didn't eat really crappy food. I worked out for hours at a time, but my mindset continued to hold the belief that I'm fat. Even though I'm doing all the right things, I still think I'm fat. And guess what? I was. Something you said earlier about like people thinking that they're not lovable because of their size or whatever the case is. But at my biggest, that's when I met you. You loved me and you saw my soul, not my physical vessel. So thank you for proving that it doesn't matter what your size is, as long as you authentically are still showing up. And I think that so many of the times we hide our true self bury it behind our body because we're ashamed or afraid, or even #MeToo, that plays a big part in body shame and the way that we love our body, the way that we treat our body. If we've ever been abused, we tend to disconnect from it and kind of cut it off. With all that being said, you loving me at my biggest, I was size 17 and 210 pounds. And together we've collectively lost 175 pounds together. And that was through a myriad of different modalities. We tried South Beach, we tried Nutrisystem, we tried Paleo, we tried keto, we tried every freaking diet you could imagine under the sun. And guess what? They all worked for about 6 weeks. And then we were kind of at a loss, like, what do we do now? Because diets are usually meant to be a short-term experience, especially if you're someone who's like a bodybuilder and you do a 6-week or 8-week program. What we don't really consider about dieting or wellness is a lifestyle, a lifetime of eating a certain way, so that you don't have to just do it for 6 weeks and then you go back to whatever you were doing before, because that's where the yo-yoing begins. And that's what was happening to me. I would do a certain diet for 6 weeks, get to a certain weight, still hate my body, eat, then go back to the old habits, eat like shit, and then gain the weight and be like, wait, what do we do now? We've got to start over. And so we pick a new diet, do a new thing. And it was there was never consideration of a lifestyle diet.
golly, that's so important. I mean, like you said, dieting is perfect for specific situations. If you want to look a specific way on a specific
Like
date,
for your wedding.
or you're doing some sort of competitive thing, yes, 100%. You have to diet, if that's what you want to do. But going for more of a longevity thing, and for us, really, that was where plant-based came in, where we started doing plant-based stuff, because typically on a diet, you're hungry all the time. A lot of times you're lower calories, and you're not normally eating enough fiber, because a lot of diets now demonize carbs, which means you're not going to be as full. To me, it was always hard to be full on just meats. I needed more, something that would like stick into my stomach, and I feel like I could last longer on. And it wasn't until we went plant-based that I really thought, that was such a fluke for us to go on. But it wasn't until we went plant-based until I felt like I'm not really that hungry. Now I'm eating the same kind of lower caloric things when I'm wanting to lose weight, but I'm not in that starvation mode where I feel like, oh my God, if I could just eat a cracker. I can remember some of the times where we did keto, where, man, if I could have just had like a honey bun or something, I mean, I would have sacrificed my whole family for a honey bun at certain parts, just because you get in that mode where you're just craving sugar and craving those just extra carbs that our bodies are so used to processing and so used to using to give us energy. And being in that mindset, God, do you remember when we used to do the one
cheat meal?
Cheat
I thought I was
meal
going to go to
week.
the hospital that one time.
One cheat meal a week. So
I ate so much food.
We were so bad about this. So the cheat meal, like most people, for a cheat meal, that's going to mean they add a dessert, right? They're going to have a little slice of cheesecake, or they're going to do a little something. And we didn't do that. We took it to the max. We would go to like 4 to 5 different restaurants and get full meals at every single restaurant and bring it all back home so we could all get to take out and eat it at once. Bring it back, it'd be boxes of donuts. I mean, it'd literally be everything you could think of that you would want to put in your body that would almost kill you. I mean, I can't believe we didn't have a heart attack or something with all that food.
I literally almost admitted myself to the hospital that night after Ben and Jerry's.
I mean, it was just so sickening. And then you get back in that loop again. And then you got to wake up the next morning and you feel like you've got to grind it out harder.
For 6 more days just to get to that cheat meal day so that you can screw it all up again.
And it's such a mistake to live life waiting for one moment.
Waiting for a cheat meal.
Or waiting for Friday. So many of us work all week long just to wait for Friday, or just to wait for the weekend, or just to wait for something. And then you spend, if you're spending 6 out of 7 days or so, or 5 days waiting for one day, like how much of your life are you really just giving up? And so I wanted to do something. When we went plant-based, what I realized is that I could get away with a lot more. And to me, that sold me. I could eat fruit. Holy smokes, I hadn't eaten fruit in years, because the sugar would hurt me. It's the sugar content. I couldn't have a banana. I couldn't eat an orange or an apple. That was just no way I was going to do that. And now it's just like, it's so much easier to be able to eat regular foods. I mean, I can go to any place and eat foods. And back then it was such a struggle mentally, because all I could put on my plate was, cheese and a piece of sausage, and then expecting that I was going to get fantastic nutrition out of that. Like I don't know how I was deceiving myself in a way, but that's kind of what ended up happening.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Nutrition. Like there's no nutrients in those types of diets unless you are being extra mindful and eating plates of broccoli and, the daily dozen. But no one's talking about the daily dozen in any of those other diets. It wasn't until we found whole food plant-based that we realized that we need certain levels of nutrients that come from different plants that will provide the sustainable energy that we need, just at a base level. And, finding Emily was really what happened for us. Like, it was such a blessing in disguise. In 2012, we started CrossFit, and there was a wonderful woman there named Emily who had a ton of issues. She was quite a bit overweight, had never had that issue before, had all kinds of different diseases, and her doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. And Guru Carmichael over here is like, I'll figure it out for you. So he spent months researching how he can help her. What are the protocols? Here are different modalities and techniques to help eliminate any of these issues. Going through all of those modalities and techniques that you were going to use to help her really armed us with the right tools and mindsets that we needed to be able to take on this adventure that Emily was going to soon shut down.
Yeah, I when she told me that she'd gone to all these different doctors and they'd ruled out so many of the things, what that forced me to do is to not look at the medical side of it. So I thought that if the doctors have exhausted all of their ideas, then it's not going to be on the medical, take pills, surgery, those kind of things.
And that was before we were like metaphysical, like energy, woo woo. Like we hadn't really delved into that yet.
And I got lucky because when I was in real estate, we had a contractor who had I can't remember what form of cancer he had, but
it was prostate cancer.
Well, I'm glad you remember. There we go. So he went to the hospital and they pronounced him dead while he was still able to be talking to them. He's like, they're like, you're dead, dude. I don't know how you are talking or doing anything. And he came back and said, hey guys, I'm gonna have to take a couple week break or maybe even a month break from doing the rehabs on these houses. I'm gonna go and try these other methods out in Mexico and see how I do. And he came back a couple months later and was a totally just changed guy. So I started there. I started with looking like...
That was Gerson therapy.
Gerson therapy. So he went and did the Gerson method, which is like heavy juicing, using Norwalk juicer and doing really heavy juicing was a big part of theirs. And so I started there. I started looking at how does nutrition and diet and the ways we're sleeping or the ways we're thinking and what our stress levels are, how does that contribute to our overall wellness? And before that moment, I had not had that epiphany. Until she asked me about the kind of diet, and even knowing the contractor guy we had, I hadn't even thought of it then. I was still doing my regular dieting stuff, and it was still the way typical bodybuilders ate. It's normally some sort of protein.
We were doing paleo during the CrossFit days.
Yeah, which was awesome. Paleo really taught me a lot to look at ingredients.
It was a great transition to plant-based because that was the first time we started to care about where does the food come from, how are things being treated. And
it's not that people...
murder is murder, though. I didn't know that then.
And it's not that people can't be healthy, and it's not that they can't lose weight on a diet that incorporates meat, because both of those things, people have been living a long time eating that, but for us, it didn't give me the wellness that I felt that I craved. Once I started really looking into the ingredients, and then animal compassion wasn't a thing for me back then. I love my dogs, but I didn't really care about other animals. It wasn't something that I just never thought of.
Well, we had never seen what happens to the animals too, and I think that was a big part in understanding about the food and what we consume is where does it come from? It grows from the ground. Like the earth is providing all the nutrients, including the herbs and the supplements for everything that we need to survive here. And I think we should back up really quick and talk about the Finding Emily and how that impacted us because, she was a filmmaker and we had just watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. We had watched Forks Over Knives.
Food Inc.
And
Earthlings, all those ones.
Yeah, we started watching all of these documentaries on food and nutrition. And she was a filmmaker. So we're like, oh my gosh, well, we'll come up with a plan and you can document the entire experience. And so we had this whole plan called Finding Emily. We sat down with her. We went through the plan. This is what you're going to have to do. Here's the protocol. And a few days later, she emailed and she said, I'm out. I don't want to do it. And oddly enough, just around the corner was January 1st, 2013. And so on January 1st, we said, you just put in all this work and effort to figure out how to be healthy. And at that time, I felt like we were pretty healthy. We were doing CrossFit, we were competing. Our bodies were pretty close to like looking perfect, but there was still some things, still a little bit of weight. And what I didn't realize the next step was the energy levels. That's what we had no awareness of. And so we thought, well, shoot, like we're not super unhealthy, but like, let's just try it. So on January 1st, we decided that eating an alkaline-based diet was the way to go. And so we printed off a list of what are alkalizing foods because we had been growing a garden. And in that garden, we killed a plant. And Chris posed the question, wow, I think the plant died because the pH was off. And he said, well, humans have a pH, so I wonder if that matters. And sure enough, that led us to understand the alkaline-based foods and that if we have acidity in our body, then we can create disease. Only cancer and issues can grow in an acidic environment. And so we started looking at what are the foods that are acidic. Meat, dairy, cheese, sugar, and soda, which is something that I had a struggle with. Oh my gosh.
Every day, Britt would nail multiple 2 liters of soda every day.
Yeah, and so we finally, for the first time, realized that there is something beyond just what the doctors have said, carbs, fat, protein. There's actually alkaline and acidity. And so we printed off a list of what are the foods that are alkalizing, and we committed to only eat those for 1 month, along with other therapies like the oxygen therapy, and what else did we do in that?
We did yoga. We did lots of meditation.
That's when we started yoga, meditation. I mean, this
stress
was
levels. That was all about stress levels. It was an entire method designed to. Well, it was like sort of a complete wellness package. And you have to remember, and when baseline, I am an experimenter, and I just like to experiment and tinker.
The guinea pig.
Yeah, and Britt has always said, like, whatever you come up with, whatever you research, I will try out. And so, I mean, it couldn't be more perfect for me because I read a ton. And
Aquarius.
yeah, and so that's exactly what I thought. You know what? I kind of figured this out, and I think this would work for her. I mean, I don't know, obviously, and so I want to try it myself. I want. And it didn't matter if Britt was going to try it or not. I was going to do it. And so because I was going along, she decided, yep, I'll definitely do it too. And we did it for a month. I can commit for anything for a month. I mean, and so we committed for a month to do that. And I thought it was going to be stupid. I mean, honestly, I thought this is not going to, obviously more vegetables are going to be good, but I didn't think it was going to be any kind of lifestyle change that we were going to, make into the future. Maybe just adding more, hey, I'll have an extra salad a day or something like that. Or I had to toss in a little bit more, green leafy vegetables, maybe a little more broccoli. And that was going to be the end of what I thought about that. Because we already felt pretty good. I mean, Paleo did us, a lot of favors over the way we were eating before then. And going on that month, which was weird, it was weird not to just stock up on every kind of meat I could put in my body.
One time we were checking out at Whole Foods when we were paleo, and we had all this grass-fed beef, and that was the only thing on the conveyor belt because that's where we would go specifically to just get our meat products. And we made a joke one time and said, look, we're vegan. I would have never guessed in a bazillion years that we would now, 7.5 years later, be whole food plant-based. So it's really fascinating how that shift allowed for us to see that, even if you feel pretty good and even if you look pretty good, there's always room for improvement. And, going alkaline and increasing those vegetables, I think really showed us that our energy levels could skyrocket, and that's what happened during that next month.
So we ate no processed food. It was
fully raw.
It was fully raw. It was all just raw vegetables, which a lot of people can do it long term. For me, that's not something that I'm interested in doing. But for that month, it was phenomenal. I was definitely hungry because I was used to eating a lot of calories, and to get a lot of calories raw food is harder.
But you're always hungry.
It's true. It's true. But in that month, so we were still doing CrossFit in that, and I remember how easy the workouts were. I remember how I was just blowing by people who I was normally just neck and neck with.
That was definitely the oxygen therapy too, like just getting more oxygen into. I mean, you look at Lance Armstrong, hyperbaric chambers. That proves to increase your energy levels along with eating the nutrients from the vitamins. That too.
Yeah, pretty much. Plant-based vitamins.
Yeah. But what was really interesting, so we did that for 1 month. We felt amazing. Our energy levels were high. And then Chris's birthday rolled around in February, and we went to Colorado. And we didn't claim ourselves as vegan, plant-based, or anything like that. We were just experimenting. And so on your birthday, we ate at Smash Burger. We both got a burger, a shake, and some fries, and we didn't even finish it. And we looked at each other that night and said, never again. And 7.5 years later, we have been plant-based, and I am so grateful. It's so crazy to think it's been that long, but I'm so grateful that we discovered that, because this is the first time in my life I don't hate my body. I feel amazing. I don't have to count my calories. You're not making me weigh my food. Like, I don't feel restricted. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't feel restricted. I feel like obviously within a certain boundary, when you're plant-based, you're not going to go out of that. So technically, I guess there is some type of restriction.
It's sustainable. That's the difference. It's sustainable. When we were on the other things, I knew it was for a specific time. You could do it for 8 weeks. You maybe could do it all the way up to 16 weeks. But then after that, you want a damn cupcake. You wanted foods so bad. When you get hungry for a specific food, it becomes all that you can think of. At least for me, it was all I could think about. And I didn't want to live my life that way. So when we came out that first month, and I felt great. We went and had our blood drawn. And our biomarkers on everything were just so fantastic. I thought, oh my gosh. So here I've been searching for this way to health, always keeping food in mind. And then what I realized was that I didn't want to be raw forever. That was not something that I was interested in doing. I wanted to be able to warm up foods or eat soup or just, kind of enjoy some of the foods that I've always enjoyed.
Have some pumpkin bread.
Yeah, make it easy. But I knew that I needed to make some changes. And so what I started doing, especially with the way I felt during those workouts, because I just felt so energized and so good, I started looking at what endurance athletes were doing. I started looking at what guys like Rich Roll were doing, guys like Scott Jurek, just some of the other big plant-based athletes, just to try to see, because some of these endurance guys, the fact that they can go out and run marathon after ultra marathon and still do this without any kind of meat or anything, that just baffled me at the time. And so I really want to start incorporating what they were doing. I looked at Brendan Brazier, and it started to click. It started, well, I'm going to incorporate more of this stuff. I'd always been heavier, always been a lot more bodybuilding and personally powerlifting for a lot of years is what I did. And I just wanted to change. I was tired of being just always heavy. And the more that when we committed to that like month of yoga, I realized for one that I had no flexibility whatsoever, and that it was just absolutely awful.
You couldn't even touch your knees.
No, I could not. Not only could I not touch my toes, the kneecaps were a struggle for me. And this is, I was strong. I could deadlift 500-600 pounds. It was just the fact that I could not bend over, and I also could not reach my arms completely over my head. They would stop at about
zombie level.
Yeah, yeah. It looked like oh man, I did. Britt's making a zombie thing. And I knew that I felt good. I felt good for the first time. My sleep was really different. And the energy levels throughout the day, I didn't need to take naps. I just felt like I could keep going. I like a little mini Energizer bunny. And I knew that I wanted more of that. And fast forward to where we are now, it's more of I can incorporate all of the stuff that I've loved. So everything that you do evolves. So it's not always sticking to one specific plan, but it's sometimes trying things out, experimenting, and that's all we were doing was just experimenting. How does this work? And had it sucked, I would have immediately gone back to what we were doing before. But I felt good, and I was almost mad at myself for figuring this out because I knew that I had to change. A lot of times, once you experience something, you can't go back. Your mind has already been stretched by the new knowledge, and you're like, dang it, man! I just want those kolaches on the weekends. Just give me the pigs in a blanket and let's keep moving. But I knew I wanted to continuously feel this good. I never thought that my body and my mind felt sharper. I felt more clear. Everything felt like it was firing on all cylinders. And I realized that I'd done myself a terrible disservice over the years by not incorporating vegetables. I'd only had Brussels. I never had kale before, really, until we went this style. And I always remember like Brussels sprouts being something that my parents made out of like a frozen bag, and they sucked. And so I like never went back to them. As a kid, I didn't like vegetables, as most of us don't. And then fast forward now, you have to figure out.
You don't like vegetables because people, companies are pumping addictive sugary chemicals into foods that children are like, oh, colorful cereal, which has no nutrients, but automatically makes you crave it.
When you buy food and they have to market it to you, if they have to make the food look fun, something's wrong.
And if you can't pronounce what the ingredients are.
So I started really looking. I'm thankful for Paleo for making me look at ingredients, for making me read food labels. Like if you're not reading food labels, you have no idea what you're really eating, and you just can't trust stuff like the FDA and to really give you what are the guidelines that you should really be eating. You need to be figuring out what it is for you, what makes you feel a certain way. So I started setting timers for all of my meals. The second that I would eat, I put the fork down, I would set a 10 or 20 minute timer on my phone. And when it went off, I would say, how do I feel right now? So I knew what was the impact of the food on my body. Am I sleepy? Do I feel like getting up and doing something? Am I going to be comatose for a while, eating these kinds of foods? And that started to change things. So it's all about a lot of self-awareness. It's not just trusting what everybody else is doing, because we're highly individualized people. We all have certain needs that we have to meet, and you have to figure out what that is for you. Some docs can really help you out a lot, but some people they don't know what's right for you. And a lot of times, the doc is in a rush. I've gone to the doctor, they're trying to get me out of there super quick so they can go into the next...
Or pop a prescription.
Yeah, next patient.
Pad,
and I didn't want that. I didn't want to live like that. Plus, my grandfather died really early. He died from lung cancer in his early 50s. And my dad had some major heart issues early on. And I knew for me that if I wanted to live a longer, productive life, or at least give myself the best chance. Obviously something could happen to me tomorrow, but I wanted to give myself the best chance. And to me, I knew that would have to be something that I felt high energy, not enough that I'm making everybody around me go crazy, but enough that I could get anything done during the day that I wanted to do. If I felt like working out, that shouldn't be the end of my day. If I felt like going out and just being with Britt for a while. It shouldn't be something that like, okay, I'm so tired now. I should be able to walk up hills. I should be able to go swim. I should be able to enjoy myself, go on long hikes. And that's really what our life started being more about. We started enjoying the outdoors more, and just everything became part of this holistic plan to lead our lives. And that we led instead of by the scale, because we threw the scale out. I think that was a huge part for us. We
freedom.
We chunked the scale away to not base ourselves solely on a number and start to instead think about it from using our 7 or above rule. Do I feel a 7 or above? Not how does my weight make me feel? Because who cares? It doesn't really matter, because no one really knows what your weight is. Like that, just like
it's
no one.
It's not like you introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm 145 pounds. Like, you would never do that. So why do we base our entire self-worth and confidence on that stupid number? It's really interesting what you're talking about, asking how you feel after you eat food. That's intuitive eating, and that's becoming a lot more popular these days, is people starting to ask themselves for the answer and the feedback. Your body will give you the feedback. Our chiropractor showed us muscle testing, where you can hold on to a particular type of food and do the muscle testing to see, does my body want this or not? And your body doesn't lie. So it's very fascinating if you just take time to look within and see, how does this make me feel? I think that's going to be the next wave of lifestyle, is intuitive eating. Having a plan, but also really trusting yourself as the number one guru of your own body and wellness.
Yeah, and a lot of us base our entire food thing on what are our taste buds telling us. And like, you'll crave everything. I feel like I've craved literally everything. And sweets definitely, but it comes to a spot where you realize that your taste buds are such a small part of the entire makeup of your body. It's such a small, and then you sacrifice your health and a lot of other things when you give into that. And taking a very proactive role and figuring out what it is exactly, because it may not, what's right for other people may not be exactly what we do.
Right.
And so for them to find that out, I think it's powerful. It's really reclaiming responsibility for your own life.
That there's no specific one way. It's your way, but you have to be the one to discover it.
And plant-based became something awesome because, once the animal, like once you really start thinking about what you're doing.
We drove by, quote, quality beef in West Texas and realized there's nothing quality about that. And the emotional trauma that is, if you talk to any massage therapist, they say issues are stored in the tissues. Well, what are you eating? The tissues of murdered animals. Like, you're bringing into your being the pain and the trauma that they experienced and stored in their muscles. So that, to me, was a huge mind-opening experience. Like, oh, okay, let's take this one step deeper. Something you said earlier reminded me of that story that you shared when you were like 275 pounds, like super muscular big. Talk about protection. We shared that in the mushroom podcast. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, we talked about how the mushroom experience exposed Chris to the idea that the reason why I'm so big and muscular is out of protection, and I no longer need to protect myself. Well, when you were at your biggest, you shared a story where you bent down to tie your shoe and you were out of breath. You were tired from just doing that. And I think that was probably a turning point for you to realize, like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, that was the moment I knew. That was the moment. So when I graduated high school, I was 160 pounds, and I'm over 6 feet tall. 160 at 6 feet tall is definitely lean. And that, again, was coming from the 6th grade moment. From 6th grade to 12th grade, I wanted to be lean. Like, that was the idea. I'm going to stay lean, more athletic body, but lean. And then when I graduated, I thought, I need to get muscular. Like, what am I doing here? I want to be a big guy. I want to be one of those guys where you walk into a room and you're like, that's a guy. Like, holy smokes, that guy could, walk through the wall. And again, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a big hero of mine back then. Any of those bigger guys, Ronnie Coleman too, especially because I lived in the same city as him. I've actually met him a couple times, and just seeing those bigger guys, like, that's me. I want to do that, because I'd always been, for one, heavy, skinny heavy as a kid, that sort of like smaller body but heavy, and then being leaner. And I decided, so my only goal in my mind was, how can I get as big as possible? Like, what do I need to start doing? So when I
never had that goal, by the way. It just happened.
So I graduate high school, and I immediately start putting on calories, because immediately start putting on pounds. The only way to do that is to increase your calories a lot. And I want to keep working out so that I built a lot of muscle on. And so I was drinking a carton of heavy whipping cream a day. I was taking extra large pizzas and I was pouring olive oil all over them. I was going to Chinese restaurants and I would ask them like, hey, do you guys have any MSGs? Like, will you guys add extra MSGs to the food so that, that I can crave more of the food? And so I get multiple Chinese meals a day, the pizza, the heavy whipping cream, and I also go into McDonald's or Jack in the Box, and I drive through, get whatever their breakfast sandwiches were at the time, and I would stack multiple hash browns in there and then pour on as much mayonnaise as I could consume, and I was eating that. So I was getting, easily 10, 15,000 calories a day, and that's how I started getting much bigger and much bigger. But that's because I'd had the same problem that so many other people have that we talked about earlier, was just seeing as I want to lose weight. So for me, it was the opposite. I just want to gain weight. That was I tunnel vision to gaining weight. It had nothing to do with being healthy. It had nothing to do with anything else. Just how can I get as big as possible? And when you mentioned that story, I can remember I was sitting down on a couch and I leaned down. I bend down. I'm going to put my shoes on. Shoes just sitting right there in front of me on the carpet. And I put that first shoe on. And as I brought my body back up after tying the first shoe, before I bent down and did the next one, I was winded. I'm talking about like I could not catch my breath. I couldn't have run a mile. You could have paid me $10,000. I couldn't run a mile for you. And I realized, holy smokes, I've gone too far. Like I have taken this experiment that I was doing to gain weight, and I've taken it to too much of an extreme, and I'm paying for it. If you were to see me at this point in my life with my shirt off, I have stretch marks literally everywhere. I look like a
tiger ripped through your skin.
Yeah, it looked like a U.S. map turned sideways with lines all over my body. That's what it looks like, and those were intentional. I did it because I wanted to. I did it because I thought that would somehow change my persona, and I've always been the same guy. No matter what weight I've been, muscular or not, I've always been the same person. And so to get away from that attitude of how just what my physical attributes are as me, it has been difficult, but it's the truth. It's not you, and it takes a long time to do that. You also brought up something that was really important that's happened to me a lot of times in hypnosis, because a lot of people come to me for hypnosis for weight loss. That's one of the big things, to control food cravings, sugar cravings, things like that. And you almost always are. I found often enough, I would probably say 70 to 80% maybe. Whenever I regress somebody, especially females, and they are heavier, a lot of times they have used the heaviness as some sort of a protection.
Oh my gosh, I had that conversation with a coaching client today. I had her ask her body, her fat, like, why are you here? Protection.
Yep.
We take the energy that we feel as an empath and place it on our hips and build this barricade around our body so that we don't feel pain.
Well, and also what happens a lot of times is the girl will cut her hair short and get heavy. And so I'm asking her in the trance state, why, what is the purpose of this? Why are you doing this? It's so my dad won't touch me in that way anymore. And like you get things that come out like that where you realize that like, this is the body's defense mechanism. Like I said, the body is genius. But sometimes it will do things to us that are counterproductive to our real goals. And a lot of times, if you don't update your mindset with what it is that you're really wanting to accomplish, like for me, moving from weight gain or muscularity into more healthy, more where my body can sustain for a lot longer, where I can go for years and years and years without breaking my diet or whatever. We've been plant-based for so long now, and there's no idea of like cheating on it. We don't have cheat days anymore. That's not a thing. I eat the same way I eat every day, whether it's my birthday or it doesn't matter. It's still the same style of eating, and to me that was the major benefit. The animal stuff, it's fantastic. I love that we're not just slaughtering animals. And if you haven't, if you are a big meat eater and you haven't gone out to a slaughterhouse or to some place where they factory farm or see what they do with how they get fish,
raise the chickens,
or if you haven't gone out to a chicken farm, go out there and visit it. Educate yourself. Just think about what you're putting into your body and go see like what really happens. That way you can have a better feeling of this. Being in Texas is easy for us to find it out here. I mean, go out to a farm pretty easy, and people will talk to you about this kind of thing.
Well, the thing that blew my mind is when we went up to Rhode Island and we saw that apple tree for the first time. I had never seen an apple tree in my 30-something years of life, and seeing that massive tree with an abundance of fruit, realizing that it took so many years to be able to produce that tree to grow into its fullness and then to produce that much fruit, it just blew my mind, because we just walk into a grocery store and see a bag of apples and we're like, oh yeah, apples. But we don't realize that that took time and came from the earth. I mean, it's a freaking miracle. And I think that we've been so disconnected from where the source of where we get our food.
So with health being one of the most important things, and we know that we only have this body for our whole life, at least as far as we know, that you have to start asking yourself, what are those things that I really want to do? Or what are those things that I really would benefit me long term? Like if I'm going to continue with the same habits for the next, let's say, 40 years, what do those habits need to be? And you need to factor in huge how that incorporates into your health, and then how does that fit into your daily lifestyle? I mean, do you need to start a running program? Do you need to start going to the gym? Do you need to start a yoga practice like I desperately did, but had no idea that's what I needed? Just try stuff out. I mean, go get some Groupons. That's what we started doing is just trying a bunch of things out until we found something that we really fell in love with. And that way you can start being excited about exercise again, and be excited about the people that you'll meet who will also be exercising the same way that you are. Because I want to be a person that I'm in my 70s and still feel good. I'm not saying that I'm going to be 20 again in my 70s, because that's not going to happen. But how can I be at a great level for me? How can I be at like 85 to 90% of where I've always been and enjoy myself and feel like, man, my health is good. For me, I'm hardly ever sick. And it just, where can you add in those little bitty details to make your life something that is really amazing?
I pulled an oracle card from the Shine from the Inside Oracle today, and it was change one thing today, start small. And I think that's exactly what we did. We looked in our pantry, and anything that we couldn't pronounce or that didn't grow from the ground, we threw it out. And even before then, it was just the soda. I eliminated soda. And once I mastered that, that's when I think the real journey and the real test of like, let's really dial in your wellness. And when we talk about wellness, you really have to think about your health holistically. It's mind, body, and spirit, not just body. And in Shine School, I teach a lot about, overcoming the issues that we do have with our body, always doing that mirror work, telling yourself you love you, and you accept all the different parts of your body. But really it boils down to understanding that your food is fuel, and it is energy for this vehicle that our soul is rolling around in. So if you're not putting the right fuel in your body's going to respond with dis-ease. No physical disease manifests before there's an energetic disconnect or disharmony. So when we're out of harmony with ourselves, whether that be mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, we then see it show up physically. So many people are treating it backwards and thinking, oh, well, the physical is the only issue, but really there's an energetic root cause.
Oh my gosh, there's such a good book on this called PsychoCybernetics. It's one of the 3 or 4 books that I read every single year, and it's by a guy who's a plastic surgeon who was seeing so many people come in and get, plastic surgeons can do amazing things with the body. And he was finding that there was a good enough percentage of people who, even after they had the physical change, even after the tummy tuck, the boobs, whatever it could possibly be, until they had put all of their eggs in that basket, saying that if I had this specific physical attribute, then I would finally love myself. And when he found out that even after they had that, and even after they looked in the mirror and they saw that they had that, they still didn't like themselves. Just like Britt said, there's a portion where she still didn't like herself.
I was at my smallest when we were hardcore working out. This was before CrossFit and all that. I got down to a size 4 from a size 17, and I still hated my body.
So this is a journey that takes a lot of angles, and it's not just about the food, and it's not just about going to the gym. It's not just those things. So much of our lives has to do with the way that we talk to ourselves. So if you're going to think about your health and you're going to think about your wellness, you really have to have a comprehensive plan. It's not enough to count your calories. It's not enough to know what your macros are. And it takes more than that. It's more than sets and reps. It's more than time on a treadmill. If you're not loving yourself to start with, everything else is absolutely in vain. And none of it will ever bring you any kind of love. And even when people approve you, even if people are like, oh my gosh, you are drop dead gorgeous, because we have all met those people who are insanely beautiful by so many standards, and they don't like themselves. They still wake up in the morning wishing they were somebody different. So start off with the mental aspect and let that carry you through, because without the mental part, without that mindset game really perfected, the other stuff just won't matter. It won't help you. It won't get you there. You'll feel defeated and cheated, and then you'll feel like a failure because you didn't get the result that you thought you were going to get, and that's because you were using methods that can't get you there. You have to start with your mindset first, and if you don't have that, all's for naught.
No matter where you're at on your journey of wellness, we want to support you and continue this conversation. So shoot us a DM over on Instagram at Hey It's Carmichael or The World by Brit, and we'll help to point you to those resources. You know, inside the Elevated Life Membership Club, we've got bundles on weight loss where we share like the scientific macro nerdy stuff that Chris is really into. And we even have a bundle on how to transition to plant-based. If you're someone who's been thinking about it, your soul's been kind of intuitively nudging you. Every time you eat something that isn't plant-based, you start feeling like, I don't like that. I don't like the way my body feels. And this is the perfect place to get started.
And not just that, it's not just about being plant-based, it's whole food plant-based. We're not just vegans. Skittles are vegan, but we're not pounding down Skittles. So it's really about taking a comprehensive approach to what it is that you're doing. The whole foods portion of it is amazing. So many of us lack fiber in our diet. A lot of us think, oh, well, where am I going to get my protein? Who cares? For a lot of us, it doesn't matter how much, not to the extent that we think that it does. The fiber is what so many of us are missing out on. So find out what it is. Where are you missing? Where's that like weak link in the chain of what you've got going on? And find that, expose it, and then make an experiment. Remember, we're just testing things here. Does this work? Does it not? Do I feel better? Find out where that is and do it. Like, go after it full force. I mean, this is your life. You're not getting multiple chances. So get out there and figure out what is that thing for you and freaking do it.
Just like the famous physical therapist Kelly Starrett says, test and retest.
Yeah.
Just keep experimenting and let us know how you enjoyed this by leaving a review below. We are so thrilled to be joining you here on the Elevated Life podcast and sharing this kind of wisdom with you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Elevated Life podcast.